Between 1983 and 1987, Obafemi Awolowo planned to write 3 books. They were a careful documentation of what had transpired in his life, events that led up to the Nigerian Civil War. The books were to be titled Adventures in Power. Book 1 carried the title Adventures in Power, subtitle My March Through Prison. Book 3 was Adventures in Power, The Travails of Democracy and the Rule of Law. And Book 2 was to carry the subtitle For the Good of the People. Awo never got around to finishing Book 2. He died on the 9th of May 1987. He was 78 years old. It is, however, not difficult to tell what the content of Book 2 would have been. By the time his administration was winding up in December 1959, the people of Southwest Nigeria decided to rename the Action Group, that is his political party, as Afenifere. This could be translated literally as one that loves people so much as to seek the best for them. Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 2, quote, "You are our epistles written in our hearts, known and read by all men," close quote. Obafemi Awolowo's second book is an epistle written all over Southwest Nigeria and written even in the hearts and mind of many who witnessed his time in government. Men like him should not be forgotten by a nation. There is something about this man that would eventually be called a sage that every generation should study and also imbibe. On the 6th of March 2025, that is tomorrow, it will be the 116th posthumous birthday of the Ikenne-born legend. Obafemi Awolowo Foundation will be holding a webinar to this effect. The chairman of the occasion will be Thabo Mbeki, former president of South Africa, and the keynote speaker will be Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Other speakers will be Professor Ehosa Osage, Professor Kingsley Mohalu, Professor Seun Kolade, and others. The webinar will be hosted on Zoom, and I can get an invitation to you if you reach me at newdegix@gmail.com. It will be a gathering of very serious thinking persons, and the Zoom link will not be made available to the general public except on special request. Those of you who will see this video after 6th of March, that is tomorrow, might have the opportunity to watch the recorded version of the event. Now, speaking on serious thinking persons, I have found no other person to discuss Obafemi Awolowo with me than Oluseye Fatoyinbo. Fatoyinbo is an engineer trained at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Osun State. He has had stints in the banking industry and also in project management since graduation. He currently works in the oil industry as a production engineer. He's interested in writing, reading, and music. He was a contributor to an online news medium called Mouthpiece. Now he focused on history, politics, and religion. He's a passionate person who believes that true federalism, as obtained in the First Republic, is the only way for the country to attain its lofty potentials. Oluseye Fatoyinbo is happily married with children, and he's our guest, as I said today. This is Reform Nigeria Television. It is a parachurch ministry of Providence Reformed Baptist Church, Ibadan. At weekends, we publish videos that concern the gospel, but on weekends like this, today, Wednesday, when the occasion permits it, we discuss things that pertain to our national life. As a church, we're convinced that Christ has given the church all wisdom, and we hope that some of the things the Lord has planted on our hearts, we can use it to help better the lot of our nation. Welcome to today's broadcast. I am Deji Yestufu. I pastor Providence Reformed Baptist Church, Ibadan. And I want to use this opportunity to welcome Sheye to the broadcast. Sheye, you're welcome. So Sheye is actually on site at work, and he has requested for his viewed not to be made public for now. Shaya, can you say hello to our listeners? Okay, so Shaya is still there. Now, I hope he will be able to come in somehow. Shaya, I can't hear you at all. Now, pending
Can you,
when.
can you, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Can
hear
you
you
hear
now.
me?
Can you say hello to
Okay.
our
Good
listeners?
evening, Nigerians.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
having
you.
me this
Thank you.
evening.
Yes, thank you very much. We're going to have to do something about that voice, but don't worry. So today we have compressed this discussion to 9 slides so that we can um, more or less remain focused, because it's impossible to discuss the whole of Obafemi Awolowo's life. Born in 1909, died 1987 at the age of 78. There is a lot to talk about Obafemi Awolowo. But I wanted to start today's discussion with a movement called the Nigerian Youth Movement. And I don't know whether Shaya will be able to speak on this before I probably just give it a little flesh. So Shaya, what can you tell us about the Nigerian youth movement?
Thank you very much, Deji. I hope you can still hear me.
I can go ahead.
Okay. So the Nigerian Youth Movement, as mentioned, it was actually the first organization that the Nigerians, young Nigerians, educated Nigerians, the elite at that time, formed that brought Nigerians together from all walks of life, all areas of the country to agitate, to try to have a common ground platform, agitate, the things really was an independent fighting group, simply to give voice to educate Nigerians felt shocking by the way both was not really ready to recognize the system, fighting for their own eventually the political movement that even sought for elections, won elections, and even controlled the Lagos
Okay,
State
Shaya, the sound is very bad. I can
was
hardly
founded by
hear you, and it appears you're not hearing me at all.
Odin, so
I think like we can't hear you at all.
you
Yeah, but we can't hear you at all. The sound is just barely coming out, barely coming out. I really, I must confess, because he's actually on site right now, and I suspect that the internet is very bad there. Shaya, can you try
hear me?
another internet network, maybe MTN? Let's try M. Yes, it's just coming and going, and then even the network indicator here is showing very poor. All right, so I will just take over, and hopefully, maybe by the time he comes back, the internet will be better. All right. He was actually talking about the origin of the Nigerian youth movement. So this is what has happened. By the turn of the 20th century, 1901, '02, and so on, into the new century, the British had begun the formal colonization of Nigeria. And they obviously continued they saw how to govern the country. At that time, there was the Northern Protectorate and the Southern parts. In the South, there was the benefit of Lagos, because a lot of people from um, countries like Senegal, Sierra Leone, that were more advanced educationally could easily come into Lagos and trade. So in the process, we had um, a lot of Nigerians who were born in Freetown, who were born in Sierra Leone and were educated businessmen. They were coming through that. Besides that, we had the ministry of a man who had just ended by the time the 19th century was ending. His name was Bishop Ajayi Crowther. The grandson of Ajayi Crowther was Herbert Macaulay. Macaulay was a land surveyor, and with time, Macaulay began to realize that, in fact, even in the days of Ajayi Crowther, the whites had begun to try to put Nigerians that were educated under. They felt that even if they were educated, they still did not carry their level of charisma or anything. So they gave them little regard. And Ajayi Crowther had problems with those people. In fact, that man died a broken-hearted man because in spite of so much he did for the Anglican Church, he was more or less used and discarded. So I believe that in his family, that story had even petered down to persons like Herbert Macaulay, who eventually got a good education, but grew up with a commitment to seeing that the British left the Nigerian shores. But Macaulay's work was limited to Lagos. Okay. Now, Macaulay had a newspaper, I can't remember the name of his newspaper now, that used to publish these ideas. I think it was Daily Service or something like that. And young Obafemi Awolowo used to read a lot of that when he was working at Wesley College as a clerk. I believe that should be between 1930, 1932 or 1934. He used to consume a lot of Macaulay's work. And then at the same time, he also was studying Indian politics because India was colonized by the British then, but they had already begun to call for their independence. So he was studying men like, what's his name now? Gandhi, and saw the non-violent principle that the man brought, okay, and so on and so forth. So by the early 1930s, there was a group of young men who came together because they had to be young men because it was usually the younger people then who were educated. The older people, most of them were not educated. Okay, so it was usually the younger people who were educated. So they called themselves youth. In fact, they started with the name Lagos Youth Movement. Okay, but by the time persons like Obafemi Awolowo and the rest were coming to join the group from Ibadan, okay, in 1936, the name of the group was changed from the Lagos Youth Movement to the Nigerian Youth Movement to cover, the whole of Nigeria. And the aim of the vision, the foremost vision was Nigeria should gain independence from the British. Okay, and that was how that movement started. And they had that vision. They had, in fact, as of that time, they already had they already had a vision for free education for young Nigerians because they saw that if a lot more Nigerians were educated, this idea of gaining freedom from the British will gain currency. And Shaya, I'll still get to you. Please just give me a moment. The freedom from the British will get to everybody. Okay, so that was what happened, and in those days, it was the NYM, that's the Nigerian Youth Movement, was a Nigerian thing. There was no cultural division. There was very little tribal sentiment. Okay, it was all just Nigeria. Everybody was looking for how Nigerians would come together and gain liberation from the British. Okay, but with time, and then of course, by that time, the British also began to have some sense and started to give Nigerians some offices in the legislation, especially in the legislative offices in Lagos. Okay, and at a particular time, something happened. But before that happened, Nnamdi Azikiwe returned from the United States, with a PhD. Okay, and he was very enlightened. He was very smart. In fact, Awo, in his book, talked about how he was the correspondent that more or less followed Zik around and was taking down the notes of Zeke's lectures. Awol actually started more or less like a Zekist. He himself was a Zekist, and they followed him, and Zeke used to pack a halls full, and that was about 1934. Okay, in 1936, I believe 1937, Zeke started the West African Pilot. That was a newspaper that was aimed at, enlightening Nigerians about issues that concern themselves. Okay, and already before that, there was the Herbert Macaulay's newspaper. But unfortunately, by that time, Macaulay had developed, Macaulay did not have a very good democratic trait, trait. Okay, so he tended to be like the boss, amongst many. And because of that, he alienated a lot of people. In fact, it was a lot of people that left Macaulay that went on to form the Nigerian youth movement. Okay, so the West African Pilot started. It was a leading newspaper by that time. Zeke put a lot of money, got a lot of sponsorship, and it was a paper everybody needed to read. Now, the NYM did not create their own newspaper at that time because they felt that Zeke could be a voice for them. I don't know if Sheye can try and see. Let's see how the voice will be. Sheye, how is our voice now? Did you change network?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Much better. Much
Okay.
better.
Yeah.
So do you want me to finish up what I'm saying and then you just join
Please,
up later?
yeah, please finish. No, please finish.
All right. So they looked up to Zeke, the pilot, to be the mouthpiece for the NYM, for the youth movement, But unfortunately, at some point, it became clear to them that Zeke tended to pander to ethnic sentiments in the sense that the pilot was publishing more and more stories about attainments and successes of the Igbos rather than the attainments and successes of everybody. And they began to discern that there was a division there. Of course, the other older people in the NYM were a little more discreet about it. They kept quiet. They wouldn't say much about it, but not Obafemi Awolowo. Obafemi Awolowo got the NYM to, bring Zeke to a table, and they more or less they brought him to a meeting and asked him that is he for them or against them. Fortunately, Zeke was able to convince everybody that he was for them, while Awo was insisting that he was against them. This is 1934, 1935. Awolowo would have been 27, 28. He wasn't even married then, So, they used to look at that time, he wasn't yet a lawyer. And this is a PhD holder, So Zeke used to look at them and he would turn to the leaders and say, caution that comrade from Ibadan, and so on and so forth. So it was at that time both of them began to clash. And Awo ceased to be a Zekist. And he used to say, he said there somewhere in his book, he said that Zeke tended to say a lot but do very little. And I think it was from there that they got the vision that if they ever do create a political group, they will do more and say less. Okay, Sheye, do you want to just shed some light on that, and then we'll go to the next slide about Bode Thomas?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, Deji. In fact, you exposed a lot of information and history in your what you just read out now. Apart from that, Zeke, like you said, was an orator by excellence. He was very charismatic, and he came from the US with whole new ideas. Most of Nigeria's elites that time, the young people, actually schooled in Britain. Zeke was one of the few who schooled in the US, so he brought new perspective to the whole idea. And he came towering. He was a giant actually among them. But apart from that, people always forget something that we all are humans, and generally as humans, the first inclination is your own self-interest. Like I said, maybe I read it somewhere a long time ago, I can't remember, but I've always believed that the driving force of human existence is the principle of self-interest. The moment you stop catering to your own interests, you start dying. But a lot of us humans tend to pretend about it, and we Nigerians are even worse at that. You see, it was obvious that the newspaper that Zik set up, while it came with a lot of promises and all that, it was clear that it had an audience it wanted to uplift, which wasn't bad in itself, But then the others felt if you are doing, then be open about it. You can't say you are fighting for everybody and you're trying to now uplift in a particular setting, And that wasn't what even broke the camel's back there. It was now the NYM still continued as it is, and Etikoli as a president and all that. Samuel Akinsanya, and a woman too was vice president. Now, what broke the straw was the election into the legislative house. Then a certain Mr. Bayomi resigned from the Lagos Legislative House Council, and it came the time to fill that space. And of course, there was a policy in the NYM that the president should have the right of first refusal. President was Ernest Ikoli and a German. Vice President Akisaya too now said he too wanted to vie. I don't know where, maybe he decided on his own or he was pushed by whoever, And the argument came up. And Awo insisted that the German who was the president had the right because that's what their policy is, But Zik thought otherwise, that Akisaya should be for whatever reason. Eventually, Eniskoli prevailed over Akinsanya, and Akinsanya decided to vie as an independent candidate without sponsorship. He lost to Eniskoli, and that brought the first time the idea of the tag tribalism was going to come up, and it was posted on Awo by the Zig camp that it was tribalistic. And it was very funny. Awo is Ijebu. Akinsanya, who he worked against, is Ijebu too. So where comes the issue of tribalism? But that from there on, the standard could no longer hold. I remember too, before this time too, Zik had a running battle with Adetupu Ademola, who later became the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Ademola had taken Zik to court because his press, the Western pilot, he said the building where they were, it was affecting the structural integrity of the building. I think of NYM and all that, and it should be removed. And Zik fought against it. Eventually, Zik lost in court. He had to move it. So he wasn't happy about that NY was like, they were working against him. Then also, if you remember, Zik started the Western Pilot in 1937. The NYM2 started its own newspaper. I think it was the Daily Express or something in 1938, and it looked like it was trying to take market share from the West African Pilot. In fact, Zik actually resigned from NYM. It's just that he withdrew the resignation later. He first of all stepped down from the executive council, then he resigned from the movement itself. But he didn't follow through. He came back, but then it was obvious that it was just a matter of time. So in fact, most commentators will tell you that the smoke screen of propping up Akinsanya against Eniskoli was just for Zik to have a reason to formally leave NYM. And eventually that's what happened. When I didn't get it, Zik and the others, they moved away with a lot of people from the group, and before Abamakole to H.O. Davis, taking up a position in the colonial government. So the whole center could no longer hold. And before the NYM, as lofty as it was, found itself in the doldrums.
Lost its thing.
The abyss.
Yes.
Lost
so
its
two things, Shaya, I want to take out of the NYM. Number one, I'm convinced that if Nigeria is going to really make progress with regards to this subject of a new Nigeria, our youths we have to have a new breed of youths. That's the first one. Just like those sects, a new breed of youths that will do things differently. The second one is that what happened at the NYM, especially the emergence of tribalism, was not entirely an evil thing, because Awolowo said that it is impossible. You see, Nigeria is a conglomerate of nations. The British did not recognize that. They just saw us as a group of people. But it's a conglomerate of nations. As long as you have a group of people speaking one language, those people are one nation. Okay? Related languages, maybe one nation. All right? So if we're going to have a political system, people have a tendency to affiliate with their kinsmen, with Tiwantiwa. You understand? They have that tendency. So he recognized and said it was from that time he knew that this whole idea of, starting politics from the grassroots, binding together as brothers, binding together as ethnic people is not entirely wrong, and it was from that time he began to, think through the whole idea of federalism that he learned in India, and then eventually, develop it better by the time he was in government, and bring it to the table when we began to talk about independence. What do you think,
Yeah,
Sheye, about the youth
yeah.
and federalism?
Exactly. Like I said before, I said something before. Maybe I didn't really elucidate very well. There's something about we humans that we pretend about a lot, particularly we Nigerians. I said something. Let me repeat it. I said the driving force of human existence is the principle of self-interest. The moment you stop thinking about your own self-interest, you start dying. The self-interest is not a crime. Looking out for yourself is not a crime. The problem in Nigeria is that we pretend that our self-interest does not matter. We pretend that tribal interests do not matter. In Finland today, the ruling coalition has 4 parties. You have the National Center Party, you have the Finns Party, you have the Swedish People's Party, and I think the Christian Party or the Greens Party or something like that. There is the Swedish People's Party, totally committed to the protection of Swedish-speaking people in Finland. It's not that nobody's vilifying them for being tribalistic. No, that is what they're focusing. And the mistake is there is no Nigerian nation. I was said in 1947 that what we have as Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. And I think too, where he decided that, let's be real, if anybody knows Awo, is the fact that Awo doesn't pander, Awo doesn't pretend. In fact, his bluntness is one of his main disadvantages in Nigerian politics, because Awo is blunt. Exactly. He tells you as it is. There's no use pretending. You are first a Yoruba man before you're a Nigerian. You're first an Igbo man before you're a Nigerian. It's just the truth. Awo wasn't born in Nigeria. Zik wasn't born in Nigeria. It was foisted on them. So the idea of trying to now eradicate their Yoruba-ness or their Igbo-ness to give them Nigerian-ness, it was not going to work. So until we come to realize that each of the ethnic makeup, each of the ethnic constituents of this country, tribal constituents of this country, matter on their own first before they can be useful to the center, we are going nowhere. And that's where our God, Israel, this NYN, he realized that, look, Zik, he wasn't vilifying Zik. Zik was right to pursue advancement of the Igbo people and all that. The problem is pretending it didn't matter.
Yeah, I agree.
So
we're almost going 30 minutes on one. We have 8 pages. So I really want us to cover, put some steam. So I don't know whether you have seen this picture before. I just wanted to get a picture of Bode George. I saw one of, Bode Thomas. I saw one of Bode Thomas. This Bode Thomas on the left. Awolowo is on the right. This must be Akintola, don't you think? This is Akintola.
The picture is not on the screen. I can't see it.
Oh, it's not very clear to you.
No, okay. I can't even see it. What I see is Obafemi Awolowo in Nigerian and Nigerian.
Oh, okay. So Bode Thomas. So anyway, that's just a part. But I suspect that is Akintola. The death of Bode Thomas. With what would happen to the action group in the early part of 1960, began to make people think that what would have happened if Bode Thomas had lived. Bode Thomas was obviously, I think he wasn't obviously, he was even the deputy to Obafemi Awolowo. He was also one of the founders of the Egbe Omo Oduduwa in 1948. There's still a lot of mystery around his death, but can you just shed some light, maybe a few minutes, and then we'll go to the next page.
Yeah, I remember I grew up and listened to my dad and his elder brother talk about how Bode Thomas died, that he confronted the Alaafin of Oyo, then Adeyemi the second, I think, and that one told him in Yoruba that he was and Bode Thomas backed till he died. I don't know how true that story is, but that's the story I heard about his death, growing up. But the thing, he was a fiery lawyer, that we know. He was very outspoken, and being the deputy then to Awolowo, Adeyemi, the Alafin then, had sympathies for NCNC of Zik and Adilabu.
Oh,
Yes, so it was obvious there was going to be a clash. And he too was not somebody who hid his ideas, his proclivities, or his interests. He showed this very openly. And if we know, NCNC was a rival to Action Group in the
yes.
Western region. So it was like
Actually was holding my town, Ilesha, for a long time.
exactly. You know, so in fact, it would have ruled. Zik would have been premier Western region, even for the issue of the cross carpeting and all that happened. You know, then because that one is a whole big history too. Yeah, but Adeyemi obviously was not in the good books of the Action Group of the ruling party in the Western region, and of course, it was bound to happen anytime and as soon as they could. Just like what happened between Dazuki and Abacha in 1996.
Yeah.
The Sultan was then. So
yeah. But you know, a lot of people are accused, not accused. A lot of people tend to believe that Awolowo had some powers. You know, because I mean, this is your second in command. That let's just imagine that. Let's just say that story was true. You know, how come they had no powers over Awolowo? What do you think?
Well, I'm a Yoruba man, and we grew up hearing a lot of stories about a lot of things, Yoruba, voodoo, and the rest. I remember Awolowo is Ijebu, and they will tell you Ijebu have 6 issue mefa issue Ijebu. Méjì jíjẹ, méjì taije, méjì yòókù wọ́n fi ń rú bọ́ọ̀lù.
Yeah, but interestingly, in his book, he actually talked about how his father instilled, you know, a belief that there is one true God, you know, and that, you know, this whole belief in supernatural powers, he really put those things. In fact, his father joined a group of Christians to tear down a shrine, you know, and I will grow up to know about that story, you know. So, but that's a part. But it's the story of Bode Thomas and his death. And there's a major road in Lagos that is named Bode Thomas. I think in Ikeja, right?
Yeah.
All right. So then, next slide. Let's look at the one spent. Aha. So we come to Samuel Ladoke Akintola. You know, there's a colleague of mine or a friend of mine in church who says that the supporters of Akintola and the supporters of Awolowo are still clashing till today. I don't know whether you know about that issue.
Yeah, of course, there will still be. In fact, in 1994, I remember then one of my cousins came to serve in Port Harcourt. Then we're still in Port Harcourt, you know, and it's one of his friends who was from Ogbomoso, and we're talking in the house, but we call him Bodaoji, you know, we're speaking one day, discussing politics. I was discussing politics as a teenager and all that, you know. And when you mentioned Awo, he said Awo Woni Ka, Babaika. It was in 1994. You know. So it was shocking. That was the first time I would hear somebody, Roman, you know, speak against Awo. And it was shocking for me to hear, but it made me go on the reading journey, and of course I found out a lot of things.
Exactly. You know, that's a good one. Awo Woni Babaika. You know, I have a good friend here in Ibadan. He's also from Ogbomoso. You know, he's a little more tame in his reaction, but you can tell that he doesn't like Aworara, you know. That you know, Samuel Ladoke Akintola is a man in his own right. Whatever you may have against him, where I work in UCH, he was one of the people who worked with the Baliwa government to plant UCH in Ibadan. You know, was a very gifted man. You know, he was a man in his own right. You know, but somehow but I also think that it's the division between Awo and Akintola is a lot more than this deputy and governor wrangle that we have in our day. What do you think?
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was that, of course, but there was mutual respect between both of them. Akintola took over as a deputy to Awo, you know, then became the premier of Western Region. Awo went to chair the opposition in Lagos, the Lagos House. What caused their division? Some people tell you the politics, of course. Then, of course, there was also the home front. There was rumors of a rivalry between Falirera, Akintola's wife, and Jideolu, Awolowo's wife. But that maybe is gossip tales and all that, you know, tales of the wives. But the issue of alliances for the forthcoming, for the next dispensation in the federal government was actually the bone of contention. Akintola was angry about the tribalism being displayed at the federal level by the NCNC faction of the NPC-NCNC coalition. The issue of the railway corporation, where Dr. Ike Gianni was the chairman of the railway corporation. And he listed, there was a white paper even that was published that period, and actually proved that the nepotism, the tribalism was on a terrible scale. Where somebody who even retired as a messenger was brought in as a board member, of one of the parastatals and railway corporation. It was crazy. So that was the crux of Akintola's argument that if we stay, these guys, as he's talking about NCNC of Azikiwe and all that, we're going to overrun the West. Because then Awo had started thinking of the next coalition to form. He was willing to go into coalition with Zik after the failed one where they couldn't meet to form the coalition to take over government in 1959. Zik had fallen out of favor with the Baliwa government. He didn't get what he wanted and all that. So they were now seeking an alliance with Awolowo again. He wasn't against it. He preferred working with Zik than going to the North, because I believe there was still, even though they were rivals, there was still something they could benefit from each other than with the North. But Akintola did not want to listen to it. Where he gave his famous speech in Yoruba, where he said, Ikini Ani, Ikeji Ani, Iketa Ani, trying to say where you go to NRC, Railway Corporation, you see everybody's Ani, or something, just like an euphemism for anybody coming from the East and all that. So that was that was the problem between Akintola and Awo. Akintola refused to follow Awo in trying to work out something with Zik. He preferred to go with the North, and Awo would never work with the North. So that was the main problem that happened between both of them. And Awo, Awo is a speaker, but you need to hear Akintola speak. Akintola was a better orator than Awo. I remember there was once when my father told me they were invited for the Council of Yoruba House of Chiefs to state their cases. Awolowo was finished speaking. And when Akintola wanted to start, Awo told them, Emma Akintola sọ̀rọ̀. Emma Jeko sọ̀rọ̀. Because Akintola was an orator. It was that good. It was that good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about Obafemi Awolowo, because tomorrow the sage would have been 116 years old. He was born 1909. However, of course, it's not even possible that he will be alive today. But there's going to be a webinar on Zoom to commemorate the whole event. It's been hosted by the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation. You can actually find them online. The chairman of the event is His Excellency Mr. Thabo Mbeki. The keynote speaker for the event will be, again on Zoom, will be Professor Jeffrey Sachs. There will be other speakers, Professor Osage, Professor Kingsley Mongalu, Mr. I can't see that name very well here. There's a Professor Sheon Kolade and a couple of others. Okay, it's tomorrow at 6 p.m. If you are interested in joining the webinar, just send me an email at newdgx@gmail.com. I will send you the Zoom link. Okay, the Awolowo Foundation people sent me the Zoom link, and I intend to share it with serious-minded people. Okay, so I think it's something that 6 p.m. tomorrow. Everybody should be available to watch that. We're still discussing Obafemi Awolowo, and of course the sage, the man who God used to help. And incidentally, Sheye went to to the school that is named after him, Obafemi Awolowo University. Now, there's a lot that can be said about the Nigerian Civil War. I can't even go into average on the major figure on the Nigerian Civil War. And share that this noise coming from your side there. I've read a major Victor Banjo, but there's this thing about the war, especially our contribution to it, and that was how he managed the country's finances. So much that the nation did not borrow a dime throughout. In fact, I hear that Ojukwu at some point said that Biafra is not fighting Nigeria, we're fighting Awolowo. I think he made that statement somewhere or sometime. Besides that, I also learned that when Awolowo was running his first cabinet in his administration between 51 and 59 in the Western region, he usually held, at one point he was commissioner for finance. Sheye, do you want to say something about how this man handled the country's finances so much that we didn't borrow a dime throughout the Civil War?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Awo was a prudent manager of resources, and I guess his terms, he's an Ijebu man now. Ijebus do not spend money anyhow. So, but that's in a lighter note. But the thing is, he was, if not for him, there is no way Nigeria could have prosecuted that was successful. There is just no way. Without entering into serious debts that would have ruined the country for years and years after. He just ensured there was no magic he did. All he did was to ensure that loopholes were plugged. Loopholes were plugged. Seriously, he did not. He started taking savings, ensured that every saving, encouraged all ministries, to cut their expenses. I think everybody was remitting back, even from what we budgeted and all that. Remitting back, was it 1% or some small percentage, but it amounted to much eventually.
Civil servants were donating towards the war effort, and it wasn't even actually donation. They were actually saving it. Government was going to pay them back in future.
Exactly. Everybody was saving, trying to raise the money from inside. That was it. The ministries, even as ministry allocation and all that, you were asked to plow back. And because people saw the sincerity of the Federal Commissioner of Finance, who was Awo himself, everybody was able to buy into it, which is also a lesson for leaders today. If people, followers, see that you are sincere in things, everybody will come into it. Everybody will buy into the idea. But when we see privileged leaders waste money and all that, how do you want to encourage the followers, to be circumspect and all that way? Money matters, So that was just it. He ensured that there was no waste.
Yes. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You're gonna say something?
Yes. Speaking about managing resources, Awolowo and the Action Group raised £10 million for the 1959 election. Can you remember that episode?
No, I can't remember the details of that.
Okay, so this was what happened. There was the need for them to reach northern Nigeria. They had, their works was showing in the southwest. There wasn't so much to campaign in the southwest. Southwest was their stronghold. There was a need to enter northern Nigeria, and campaign there. And then Awo, went to the north. They said that he used to fly in a helicopter. They used to deny him to land, so his followers will have to clear farmlands and then he will land there, and things like that. They used to drop flyers all over the place, even in the east. Eventually, even though they didn't win the election in the east and in the north, they became the opposition in those places, But for that election, Sheye, they spent £10 million. In fact, it was the foundation for which the Balewa government began to, set up the Coca inquiry, because they were like, where will you find £10 million to do this election? When I was campaigning in the north, it forced Saudana out of his house in Kaduna, and he also had to go to the streets and tell the people that yes, unfortunately, of course, the way we do election in this country, they didn't win, but they made a point. Now I tell my children are 11 and 13. I tell them, when we're going to Bodija from our home, we are heading towards towards UI. We pass through Bodija market. You find that there's a divide. There. You will see Hausa people line up there. If you find out the ages of these people, none of them could have been born in the 50s or in the 60s. All of these people would have benefited from an Awolowo government, because what he was trying to do then was to bridge the gap, the educational gap between the north and the south. Hasten it. Unfortunately, they didn't. This country. Anyway, so that was what £10 million. They were like, where did you get the money? And then they set up.
Yeah, In fact, it was you take for instance the issue of the free education, where 100,000 children were enrolled in schools in one day all over the Western region, up to Delta State here. In fact, one of my senior colleagues here, who was he's retired some years back, he said he was one of the first children who were enrolled under the free education period that time.
That was January
Western region.
1955.
Yes, and here in Delta State, there was another Western region then. So he never forgets. In fact, he ensured that all his kids schooled in the West. They're not going to school anywhere else but the West. He wanted to, whatever it is that they were teaching them in the West, he wanted the children to get it. So it was a genius at that. It was genius management.
The story about Awolowo and education is another story entirely. I got this guy to come to my house to install inverter for me. He saw me reading Awolowo. He said that is the man that made me go to school. I said, how? He said his own father, who eventually died as an engineer, was, on kosher. He was learning to do some kind of skill, And one day his boss sent him to the house or to his own boss and said, go and get some money from Oga. By the time he got there, he saw Obafemi Awolowo and some other men, in that man's house. They were doing a political meeting, and he walked up to the man and said, please, Oga said I should collect this to us. So by the time he gave him the money, Awolowo stopped the meeting and asked, he said, why are you not in school? And the boy said that he's not interested in going to school. He has done primary school. He wants to go on and do something else. So they said Awolowo shut down the meeting, and for about half an hour, he educated his dad on the blessing of being educated. And the guy returned back, dropped this. I went back to school, and that's all of his children. The guy that installed my inverter was my classmate in the university. They have a medical doctor. They have all of them were educated. So I was like, so this man's story is still being told till now. There's a woman who is married to a professor here in Bodija. She goes to my church. I can't even mention her name. This woman told me that she was one of the people who started the free education in January 1955. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Reform Nigeria Television. We're discussing Obafemi Awolowo. Our production is brought to you by Lakim Investment. They have a shopping facility in the Beshe Housing Estate in Ikorodu. I want to use this opportunity to play their advert and also encourage you or ask you to please patronize them, because they are the ones that have made our broadcast possible. Lakim Investments, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, Obafemi Awolowo's 116th posthumous birthday. To commemorate the event, we're going to have the Obafemi Awolowo Foundation talk to us or hold a webinar on Zoom. I want to ask that if you're interested in the webinar, please, I encourage you to get in touch with me through newdgx@gmail.com. and I'll send you the Zoom link. New Digi, that is DEJIX at gmail.com. The chairman of the occasion will be Thabo Mbeki. The speaker will be the famous American economics Jeffrey Sachs. And then there will be Kingsley Moghalu, Ehosa Osage, and a host of others. Let's just quickly go back. There's a slide here that I want to talk about, very important, and that's slide 6. I actually want to look at Obafemi Awolowo's relationship with Obasanjo. What was the problem between these two? What happened, Sheye? What happened between Awo and Obasanjo? Both of them are from Ogun State, but somehow, before you even go to it, Awo said something that is quite instructive. He said before the British came, Yorubas were at war with each other, and I suspect that this war thing has not stopped. We are still at war at each other. So just over to you, Sheye.
Yeah, starting from your last point, whether Yorubas are at war with each other. The truth is, every tribe has internal wrangling. It's only in the committee of angels are you not going to have issues. Even if families we have problems, so that one is nothing special. It's only to pretend about. But that aside, I do not think that Obasanjo has always been somebody who didn't believe, who hasn't realized that there are nations in this nation called Nigeria, who hasn't realized that what we have, just like we said, we have the Igbo nation, we have the Yoruba nation, the Hausa nation, the Fulani nation, and all that. Obasanjo has just simply refused, for whatever reason, to acknowledge that fact that you have nations, bound by different characteristics that is unique, intrinsic to them, that identifies them, and that's his grasp with Awolowo, why he decided that he was going to do all he can to ensure that Awo doesn't get it. Now, I do not belong to the people that said Awo would have been the president in 1979 if not for OBJ. I do not think, even if it had gone to maybe electoral college that time, Awo would still not have won. Whatever happened then, because I did not see how the North would have been convinced to vote for Awo over Shagari, no matter what credentials Awo was bringing. But that aside, then my own personal observation is that OBJ, I might be wrong, but OBJ seems like someone who who doesn't like the idea that another person from his own side of the country was going to have anything that would amount to what he has achieved. We see it play out in a long time. Of course, this one might just be something that is not data driven, but we see a relationship with him and Benjamin Dekunle, the Black Scorpion, took over everything that one had done, and within 6 months, he took the surrender and he took all the glory. Writing your book, Not My Will, which made assassinated General Alabi Sama writing his own rejoinder in the tragedy of victory. So I don't think there's anything personal between Awo and Obasanjo. They were miles apart. Awo was like a father to Obasanjo. So I don't see any, but he made every effort to rubbish anything Awo wanted to do. In It's Not My Will, it was a real dig at Awo, that what you were fighting for all these years, I got it on the platter and I relinquished it and all that.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything special.
He has made comments like, while Awo had never became president, he has been president of Nigeria twice, on all of those things. But it's okay. Yeah, so Awolowo and the premonition of his death. The man was he a psychic? I mean, I have, I thought I brought, Wale Adebanwi's book on the wife, In the Radiance of the Sage. I want to read page 238, talking about Awolowo's death. Awolowo had given indication that he was hoping to depart soon. On his last birthday on the 6th of March, 1987, he had said that what I am celebrating actually is the imminence of my transition to eternal life. The fact that I am happy to celebrate it means that the great beyond must be a happy place. He had added that even though he didn't realize the ambition to serve Nigeria as the head of government, his earthly accomplishments constituted a source of internal joy to me. He concluded, quote, I have a strong conviction in life after death and the possibility of continuing to serve even after death, close quote. The whole country descended on Ikene at news of Awolowo's death spread. By the 10th day of Awolowo's death, no less than 200,000 people had visited his widow in Ikene. I remember very well the day Awolowo died, or that period. I remember I used to watch, I read a lot of newspapers, got to see him, that his see-through coffin and all of that. The man was, he was something. But what was with this because in 1957, he told Akintola that after the independence, Nigeria was going to descend to gloom. Something was going to happen. He couldn't tell. In fact, I think he himself had forgotten it was Akintola that reminded the press in 1962 or 63 and said, see what that man said, that some evil is going to befall Nigeria. When he was sent to prison, when he was found guilty, he said the darkness was going to come upon this country. It happened. What was with this man and, his ability to see into the future?
Yeah, the thing is, Awo is a very perceptive person. He was a very perceptive person. He was somebody who was very intuitive and very observant too, and confident. I don't know how many people who are that confident in their own abilities and capacities to do things the way Awo is. And people tell me, even the Britons took it as arrogance. And the truth is, my neighbor Dao Yekawi, he believed he was good. And he was so sure of himself. And the thing is, I don't see this as being psychic or having some esoteric abilities and all that. It's simply the power of observation. And you cannot build something on nothing. Anybody that saw the way the NYM fell apart in 1941, anybody who saw the way the Constitutional Conference of 1953 went in London, when I asked for the secession clause in the Constitution, and it was shut down, even despite putting out cogent reasons why we had to have this thing, it was shut down. It was just inevitable. You are building castles in the air. It was only a matter of time. Like I said, among all of them, Awo was not a pretender. He was too blunt for his own good. And he'll say it as it is. I remember an incident that happened there, before he was assassinated by Bacha, said something that when they were in London then for that conference, I think in 1953 or maybe 1955 or something, that he was sick and he was supposed to go to the hospital and all that, and of course the bill of the government. And I told him, Alfred, take money from my pocket, please. Pay. Say why? He said because some of our members here already have gonorrhea and syphilis, and they want us to use the government money to treat them. If they see that you are treated on government money, even though your own is normal sickness and all that, they will come with their own. So no, I don't want anybody to. That kind of person I is. He said that to our friend Rwanda.
When he died, when Awolowo died, it was said that Soyinka was angry. He was angry that this was a waste of resources, just wasted the man's life, that this man could have changed this country.
Yes, so the thing is, he had his, I won't say it as premonition or having psychic powers or whatever and all that. He studied it, and if you see it, you knew it was going to happen. The robbery of 1962 showed that we're just living on time bomb. The rigging of the election in the Western region was a time bomb waiting to happen. So I don't see, and of course he's 78. Was he going to live forever? He knew what was working inside him. Probably maybe he had one illness, whatever, that people didn't know about. He knew his time had come. So I don't see anything special about it. It was just his abilities to understand the truth to himself.
Yes, I've read this book, Awo. I saw where he enunciated the gospel of Jesus Christ. He talked about the fact that Efunyelada's, his mom, was actually dedicated to the river gods, and that the woman never renounced this animism, despite being married to a Christian man. She never renounced animism until her own mother died. That's Awo's maternal grandmother. And he was one that led her to understand the gospel and believe. You understand? So this is somebody, when people say the man was psychic, I suspect that. And do you know that he had roots with Wesleyan Methodists? The Wesleyan Methodists.
Yeah.
Yes, he had. Yeah. He observed. I think he was very observant. So he could tell, number one, that a lot of white people were not true to their religion. That's number one. Then secondly, he could also tell that there were lots of positives in the Christian religion that you could bring even into normal life, into natural life. You know, that's why some of us are, I mean, some people say that until you become a Christian minister, you have not started serving Jesus Christ. I mean, you can be serving the Lord as a politician, serving the Lord as a teacher, serving the Lord on the oil rig, you know, or in the hospital like some of us do. You know, the man said he felt called to be a politician. Shall let's bring our discussion to a close. Can you tell us a little bit about federalism? I was key political. I mean, I learned it from reading him, you know, but if you can help us with that.
Yeah, thank you very much. The federalism is the idea that, you know, that the country should be made up of federating units who are solely responsible for their own destinies. Just like it happened, eventually it was his ideas that was incorporated in the Nigerian constitution that we used that independence, you know, where each of the regions had theirs, and it was great. You grew at your own pace. The only thing that he didn't get, which he wanted that time, was to be in charge of their policing. Each region should have his own police. Yes, you have his own militia too. You know, that wasn't granted him. You know, but every other thing he propounded, and we saw how workable it was until greed.
Even the idea of the states that we have now came from Awolowo. He had been insisting before that the North should be divided into three. You know, the Middle Belt should be carved out from the North. The Midwest should be carved out from the Southwest, and then the COR states should be carved out from the East. But they only did out of the West.
In fact, that one of the reasons why Ahmadu Bello that we saw never work with Awo, because it was like Awo wanted to break his territory, his empire of the North. But that even, if we remember, even when people say Awo swore to secede with the Western region if Ojukwu declares. No. The issue Awo raised was the issue of the minorities. When he gave that speech on May 1st, 1967, to the Yoruba House of Leaders of Thought at Mapo Hall in Ibadan, on May 1st, 1967, you know, the imperative you read before was that if you are doing this, if the East is allowed to go by omission or commission, the West will not stay. But apart from that, what are we fighting? What happens to the minorities? And he mentioned them by name, the Engenis, who as few as 8,000 in population. You know, it was thinking about these guys. You know, the minorities, how they were going to survive, you know. So it was when he always wanted that nationalistic ideas. You people, everybody should be able to determine what they want. What I as Yoruba man want, different from what the Soko man wants or what the Yoruba man wants. And it's until we realize that, until we come to terms with that fact, we'll just be continuing this maze.
Sure. I'm not sure of my internet. I'm about to switch to another internet. I don't know how long, but if it fails, just take this point and try to finish up the discussion. Now, I want to say something about Bola Tinubu. This man, our president, with all due respect to the man is not an Aoist.
I agree.
He's not. Tinubu tends to come from a more capitalist point of view, and so on. Awo was very socialist, even though he also didn't like tags. But ultimately, they adopted the democratic socialism as their political principle. I think sometimes in 1960, 1961, you know, there was, I mean, in fact, if you say you want to describe his political principle, was Afenifere. And I'm learning now that Afenifere was actually a nickname that was given to the action group in the 50s when they were in government. I don't know whether you know anything about that.
Yeah, that's true. I've read that too. It was a nickname, and if you look at the etymology of the word and all, if you look at the way it came up, obviously it would be a nickname. Afenifere, somebody who wants the betterment of other, who wants itself and wants other people to be okay. And that just some of the ideas of the action group. Everybody should be okay. If I'm educated, the son of my driver should be educated. But you're very correct. Bola Tinubu is not an Aoist. It can never be. All I just says, Bola Tinubu is somebody who learned from three great men in Yoruba history: Awo, Akintola, and MKO. He learned from them. He applied the advantages they have, and he learned from their mistakes and tried to avoid them. We don't have time now, otherwise I could go on to try to analyze each of how he benefited from each of these three men. But he's not an Aoist. He's not.
Yeah. Yeah, let me take the last point here. Now I'm feeling more and more, especially we started with the NYM. You remember that me and you met on nairaland.com. I think it's about time that these are our young, because I don't consider myself a young person anymore. I could hear by now. I'm almost 50. Benny, our young people have to come together and do something. And this thing is going to be more than NSAS. No, Tinubu is not going to give the youths government. They have to come together. And this thing, I mean, look at this lady in Britain now, Kemi Badenoch. She's 42. She joined the Conservative Party at 25. What are our young people doing? They are doing skits. Are we on Shayna?
Now the problem is, are you done? Sorry, Deji, are you done? Let me not continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now you talk about Kemi Badenoch joining the Conservative Party. The youth do not want to learn at the feet of the elders. And the NSAS is just a picture of what to expect. Deji, are you still there?
I'm still there. I'm here. Are you hearing me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. So that's just it. Kemi joined. She learned through the ropes. She started from scratch and she built herself up. You want to start at the top of everything: politics, business, money, and all that. And the youth will do anything to achieve it. And that is it's a problem. I really don't know how. I think we are still in the tunnel, and I don't know how we are going to come out of it. But using NSAS as a yardstick to measure, how did it end up? It ended up in brigandage. It ended up in arson. It ended up in chaos. Forget, of course, we know the government took advantage of it and all that, with soldiers, everything. Yeah. But how did it? No government is going to wait until it gets to that point.
Exactly.
And then even now, after that incident and all that, how did the law of the NSAS people come out? We've been hearing stories of how they mismanaged funds, how they stole, how a lot used it to advance themselves careers. Some jackpot and forgot about everything and all that. Still the same selfish outcome of what you say you want to change. So I think the youth, and I think maybe the youth, we are overrated. I don't know if I'm still a youth anyway. You and I met on Ireland some years back. Of course, we are no longer as young as we were then.
But
and until we should, please, people should encourage youth, we must first know our culture. Learn to even speak your language. Go to your culture. Start from that place before you come out into the nation. Until we correct the ills, even in our own settings, it's going to be difficult trying to change the country, because there will continually be mutual mistrust and distrust. You can't help it.
Yeah, when you talk about our culture, I remember that the Habak Macaulay guys, they used to brand English names, but by the time it came to the NYM, all of them were using local names. Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe. There was no Collins. No, all of those things. They used they encouraged those things. So that's important. Gentlemen, ladies, please, tomorrow is going to be the 116th of March. 2025 is going to be the 116th posthumous birthday of the sage. You want to be part of the webinar? Please get in touch with me at newdgx@gmail.com. I want to thank Oluseye Fatoyinbo for being a guest. He couldn't make his video available because he's at work right now. Thank you, Sheye, for being there. We really appreciate you. I want to thank all the people who stayed with us throughout. These people who just stayed throughout. God bless you very much. On Saturday, we're going to have Reverend Father Justin Imba-Eri come to continue the discussion on the deity of Christ. Our weekends want to focus on theology, religion, and then weekdays want to translate theology and religion to practical issues like politics and so on. This is Reform Nigeria Television. It's brought to you by Providence Reformed Baptist Church, Ibadan. We have our local church at the University of Ibadan. I'm the pastor there. I'm the missionary pastor there. You want to get in touch with me, please, again, the email is newdgx@gmail.com. Thank you very much for being with us, and